the first game, the NFC Championship, against all odds, the Washington Commanders at the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's start off with looking at the Eagles' offense versus the Commanders' defense. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Paul?
So for me, this starts right up front in the trenches. The Commanders' D line, they've got those two D tackles from Alabama who are decent, not special, but they're decent. They're big space eaters. But the edge rushers of the Commanders are not big. They're pass rushers and not run stoppers. That's going against the Eagles' O-line, which I'm going to say it is the best O-line in the NFL and the best running back in the NFL. The linebackers of the Commanders, they're not great. I mean, you're sensing a theme here. This roster is not great all around the Commanders. And there is one thing, Lattimore versus AJ Brown. Lattimore's going to try and get under AJ Brown's skin, which is possible because he's quite a emotional receiver. But I don't know how much that's going to actually affect this game. This game, to me, or this side of the matchup, comes down to the Washington D-line and their linebackers and how on earth they're planning to stop this running game of the Eagles. Because the Eagles are going to lean on the run a lot. With Jalen Hurts and his injury, he's possibly going to be limited in his mobility. So that's going to take away the read option side of the Eagles offense. Is that going to matter? I think the Eagles are going to run for at least 200 yards as a team. Whether that's Saquon or just as a squad, I don't know, because Gainwell, by the way, is pretty decent as well when he comes in to spot for Saquon. Commanders, yeah, I just think they're too undersized for this Eagles offensive line and this running game. In the two matchups this year, the Eagles as a team have ran for 440 yards in the two matchups combined against the Commanders. Jalen Hurts, they're going to make it even more simple than what they normally do. So there's going to be a lot of check downs. They're not going to ask him to escape from the pocket much. I think if he feels the pressure, if it's a drop back and he feels the pressure, he's probably going to be told just go down, just take the sack. Don't try to escape, because we saw what happened when Kenny Pickett came in. The Commanders came back and won that game. Did they win that game? They did win.
Won that game.
They won that game, yeah. So, yeah, I give the advantage to the Eagles on that side of this matchup. They're a simple offense anyway. And I don't think that Jalen Hurts, his mobility or lack of, is going to affect them as much as, say, it were Jaden Daniels. On the flip side, if it were Jaden Daniels with the injury, that's huge. It's not, because they've got the running game behind him to support, and they've got a very simple passing game. Throw it up to AJ Brown. Quick slants and flag patterns to Devontae Smith. It's the tight end over the middle. He's come into, what's the guy's name now? Calcareca or something?
Calcaterra, yeah.
Yeah, so he's coming into his own now as well. Yeah, I give the edge to the Eagles here. I think, but they're not, the Eagles aren't explosive. Like, they do have a lot of just because they're a run-orientated team, it's either a 14, 15 play drive, grind out the clock, or it's Saquon's going to just take it to the house at any moment. Yeah, I think the edge here definitely goes to the Eagles. That O-line is huge. The Commanders' D-line is not. We've seen it twice this year already. You can game plan all you want for it, but there's some big dudes on that Eagles O-line, and they are going to move the Commanders' defensive line around. What do the Commanders do? Do they send blitz? Do they send run blitzes? I don't think it matters. I saw last week the Rams had 7, 8 guys on down to stop the run. And what happened? He burst through, and then all he's got to do is beat the safety, and he's taking it to the house. That's exactly what happened on that play where, he was saying something like almost smiling to Jalen Hurts, like, oh, we got the coverage, we got the look that we wanted. All he's got to do is just slight juke to the left, and then he's just got to beat the safety, and it's not green grass, it's turf, but it's open turf all the way to the house. And that's got to be a beautiful feeling when Saquon's lined up. You've got Saquon there, you've got this O-line, and then the defense shows you a look, and you go, okay, yeah, we're in the right play here. And they can check into plays as well, the Eagles. So they're going to lean even more on this run game. And I think that's terrible news for the Commanders.
Yeah, very, very interesting points there, Paul. I want to take us back to when Christian McCaffrey joined the 49ers, because I think that you said something that just explained it perfectly. The 49ers had an elite run game, as the Eagles have always had for the last 3 or 4 years, an elite run game. But you said it. Yeah, great, you've got an elite run game. But what if you add an elite running back to that elite running game? And this is what we're seeing with where the Eagles have traveled this year. Now, I said before the season, I thought Saquon would have a CMC style impact on the Eagles. And I was wrong, because I think it's far outweighed that. Saquon is still as explosive as he was when he entered the NFL. It might not be exactly the same, but he is still explosive. And as you said, Paul, one hole in this, unbelievable Eagles offensive line, Saquon's not only going to find it, but he's going to literally take it to the house 9 times out of 10. And the Rams found that out last week. The Eagles, most of the game, they're going to just hand it off to Saquon, run it up the middle. And of course, now you're in a bind because you're stuffing the interior. And as you said, when they saw that look and Saquon got that glimmer in his eye and said something to Jalen Hurts, we've got them. One juke to the left, and he goes for 70, 80 yards. The Commanders, defensively, they did get run on against the Lions, right? Yeah. The Lions made a lot of mistakes, a lot of turnovers, and it was still, it was a blowout. It wasn't like the Commanders didn't take advantage. But in terms of the game itself, Gibbs had a lot of yards in that game. Now, the Lions are very good up front, but they're not as good as this Eagles offensive line. And they are going to have a lot of trouble, I think. They've got to stop this run game. They've got to contain Saquon. And when we talk about containing Saquon, people are quoting 100, 150. That would be containing Saquon. That's the level it has got to with this team and their running game. But when you look at their passing game, I feel like I'm getting sort of Garoppolo 49er vibes, where this run game, it's a gift and a curse. Like, it's a gift because, wow, can we run it? But it's a big if the Commanders are able to somehow stifle this run game, Jalen Hurts hasn't been throwing it a lot because he hasn't needed to. But in the throwing that he has done, it hasn't been great. And we saw that again last week. You know, it's a very simple passing game. As you said, Paul, you know, shallow cross with the tight end, the sort of play action roll to the flat. Like, these are very high percentage throws. He made a couple of, you know, down the field throws. I think there was one where AJ Brown should have come down with it. But again, that speaks to the running game versus the passing game. AJ Brown, for a lot of that game, is running around. He's just running around, running routes. And then you're just expecting him to just, you know, we need you to make a play right now. Well, the guy's cold. He's not in rhythm, you know. So I'm fascinated to see where we go with this matchup, because it really does come down to, can you stop Saquon Barkley from running wild and running you out of the running of this Super Bowl? The Commanders' defense, as you said, Paul, it's not special. And that is with all due respect. Like, they've made some plays, and it's a patchwork of experience, because when you look at who they signed, Dante Fowler, you know, he can make a play, right? Bobby Wagner, one of the all-time middle linebackers, like a tackling machine. But he's right up there in age now. And, of course, Lattimore, who hasn't played a lot of the season, but he's available now just at the right time. So it's really tricky when you look at the numbers from the first two games. I don't think they will have an answer for Saquon on this side of the ball. I do think Saquon could go back to back with 200-yard rushing games like he did last week against the Rams.
And also, when you think, sorry to cut in, but
yeah,
that if say they're up, or say Saquon does have a slight knock, Gainwell could come in and run for a lot of yards on this defense behind this O-line. I think it's just like we're saying with the 49ers. Yeah, it's an elite run scheme with an elite running back. But every time I've seen Gainwell, like, he can play. He can really play. It's not just, oh, there's a massive hole and he runs through it. He's making guys miss and he makes some plays. So if Saquon does get gassed or something happens to Saquon, then Gainwell could come in and run for some yards.
It's in the name, Gainwell.
Yeah, but we can break down offense, defense on both sides of the ball. We both know there's one X factor in this game, and there's one X factor on either team's offenses. One player who is critical to the outcome of this game. And if you just break it down, personnel, X's and O's, the Eagles should absolutely stomp on the Commanders. But that's not how it works. The Lions should have stomped on the Commanders, but they turned the ball over. But the Lions' defense is not the Eagles. We'll get to it, but the Lions' defense is not the Eagles' defense. And do we think the Eagles will turn it over 5 times like the Lions did? I don't know. Was it 5?
Something in that ballpark, for sure.
3 or 4 picks, wasn't it, from Goff?
And there was a fumble. So I think maybe 4. Maybe 4.
Right. So we'll just say for the take that, yeah, the Eagles aren't going to turn the ball over like the Lions did. just the number of turnovers. You can't win playoff games like this against an offense with a defense like the Lions have. They just weren't able to stop the Commanders' offense. Eventually, injuries catch up to you, but the Lions' defense is not the Eagles' defense. It's not Jalen Carter in the middle there. It's not Slay on the outside and Quinion Mitchell on the outside and DeJean in the nickel, and it's not Zach Bourne in the middle. Like, what they're going to do with Zach Bourne? I say with Zach Bourne, like, right, you just follow Jaden Daniels. Don't worry about the run. Don't worry about the run. Like, he's got speed side to sides. He can hit. Excuse me. Oh. So, yeah, that's what I do with Zach Bourne. Quarterback spy with Jaden Daniels. This is probably the number one defense, I think, in the NFL.
It is
right up there, if it's not number one. And yeah, this guy, Vic Fangio, like, I'm not a huge fan of his scheme because it's quite safe. But when you have elite personnel like they do, then, you know, that scheme works and they'll play a lot of zone. But the zone means that, like, the people are free to come up and tackle Jaden Daniels when he breaks contain, when he breaks the pocket. So they're not tied up with the receivers. You're not terrified of this Commanders passing game, except Terry McLaurin. But the Eagles have got the corners to hopefully limit Terry McLaurin. Yeah, Eagles defense is greater than the Lions defense. Just period.
Yep, I totally agree. And it's almost like this game is going to come down to a time of possession battle, because if we look at the first two matchups, the Eagles really controlled that first match that was in Philadelphia, where, yeah, it wasn't, I don't think it was a blowout, but they were pretty comfortable in winning that game. And it was like they held the time of possession. And the Commanders just I think they caught the Commanders at a good time because, well, if we can call it this, Jaden Daniels was hitting that rookie wall for a moment. And the offense just didn't look quite like it had done before that point.
That was their game stretch, wasn't it? They just lost in a nail biter to the Steelers. Then they had the Eagles on the road Thursday night.
Yeah.
And then they followed it up with another tough opponent, and they went 0-3. But they came back, credit to them. But people were like, okay, we'll wait and see about the Commanders. And then they went 0-3. People overreacted and said, oh, okay, well, that's going to be it. No. It wasn't. That's not it. And it's still not it. It's still not over. But yeah, that was a tough stretch. I mean, regardless of rookie, I mean, because you've got to just break it down to, for anybody in the NFL to have, like, yeah, at that time, the Steelers were rolling, the Eagles on the road, and then the third opponent, I can't remember who that was, but
short week after playing the Steelers, that's not a great recipe for recovery.
Yeah. I'll look it up who they played.
Now, in that second matchup, obviously Jalen Hurts got the concussion and Kenny Pickett came in the game. And the Commanders controlled the time of possession in the game. You know, like, there was a lot of 3 and outs. I know Pickett threw a pick in his own sort of red area that really changed the game. But it was a case of the Eagles' defense were on the field a lot, and they did get kind of gassed in that fourth quarter. There was like a Jaden Daniels run on 4th and 10, I think it was, where he juked a couple of them and went for 30 yards. They couldn't really get any stops. That, you know, it just reached that point where the team's gassed, the defense was gassed. We can't cover the way we want to. We've just been on the field too long. But what I will say about that game is, even with Kenny Pickett, the Eagles were one dropped slant over the middle to Devonta Smith from winning the game. He dropped a slam dunk slant. There was no one around him, and it was the classic. He's thinking about the next move before he's caught the ball, and of course he took his eye off it for 1 second, and they had to settle for a field goal. And the rest is what happened with Jaden Daniels. So yeah, I mean, I don't need to really add any more to the Eagles' defense, Paul. I think you said it best. But last week they've got playmakers, right? That game was starting to turn the wrong way after the safety. The game was, the Rams got the ball, and it was sort of like, wait, are they going to take the lead now? And who steps up? Jalen Carter with the forced fumble to swing the pendulum back in the Eagles' favor. And I think you've been saying it for weeks now. This Zach Bourne, he's one of the best linebackers in the league. And I tell you, the Commanders love a wide receiver screen. They better be careful this week because much like my friend in Minnesota, Andrew Van Ginkel, Zach Bourne he's prowling for those wide receiver screens. He is he could get a pick six in this game if they're not careful. But yeah, it's a really strong unit. I mean, and it's quite a young unit. Like this, they've really once again built unbelievably well. Like probably is it Howie Roseman, the GM?
Yeah.
Always one step ahead, it seems. You got to give him credit because it's a young front seven, but they're already very, very good, and they're going to get better. So
the right guard of the Commanders, I believe his name's Cosme. It's not a great O-line to start with, but the right guard is questionable to play in the spot where Jalen Carter lines up. And yeah, I mean, you need everything in your favor going against Jalen Carter. But if you've got a backup in there against Jalen Carter, this is probably, I mean, they could have two of the best. You could say they have two or three of the best defensive players in the league on this defense. And if you just broke it down to, okay, so if I'm the Eagles GM and I can take any Commanders players, who do I take bar the quarterback? McLaurin.
McLaurin comes in at 2 above Devonta Smith.
Yeah. McLaurin comes in at 2, and Devonta Smith just runs routes out of the slot. I don't think I'm taking anybody on this Commanders defense, on the Eagles defense. Definitely not the running back. Yeah, it would be McLaurin and Jaden Daniels. But the game is not won on personnel. The game is won on moments. But the Eagles don't turn the ball over a lot. And the Lions did. And that's what happened. If the Lions didn't turn the ball over as many times as they did, what's the outcome of that game? How many close games have the Commanders been in that they've relied on Jaden Daniels on 4th down making something happen, or the Hail Mary play against the Bears? There's been a lot that's fallen in their favor, but you need that. I mean, they drafted 2nd overall. It's amazing. Like, I don't remember ever. I'm sure it may have happened before, but a team drafted 2nd overall and they're in the title, they're in the championship game the following year. And honestly, what have they done? They've added a head coach, an OC, and a quarterback, and a couple of 2 or 3 veterans on defense. That's it. That's it. But coach, quarterback, you can get quite far in this league with coach quarterback combination if it's the right combination, as we're seeing. So yeah, it's just remarkable. Like this Baker Mayfield made a lot of money. Do you remember back in the day when Baker Mayfield was, oh, we've just got a hit from Baker about the progressive commercials. It was always like, we didn't see it, obviously, being a blackout here in the UK, but yeah, but when you're watching the broadcast in the States, they say, oh, and we just got to hear this message from our friends at is it progressive? Yeah,
Progressive, yeah.
progressive, yeah. And Baker, what are they going to do? How much money is Jaden Daniels going to make?
Oh yeah.
Baker didn't make it to the championship round. So,
Nope.
and this kid, he's just really cool. Like he's just as that Hollywood could make a lot of money. He could make a ton of money outside of football already. Have you heard? I heard this today. Have you heard what he does to get himself in the mood for
The
the?
the VR.
That's fucking nuts.
That's amazing. When I
That
read that.
like, and well, look at the results.
Yeah. So he speeds up the game to 1.25 speed. So I think you said it a couple of weeks ago. It's like he's playing in slow motion. Yeah, because to him he is.
I
He's
was
he's used to.
At the time I wasn't aware of this VR thing he was doing, but yeah, I was seeing this rookie. Like he's not. He doesn't seem like a rookie, and he's just it's chaos around him, and he's like, no, no, I got this, I got this, and
Yeah.
seeing things almost not ahead of time, but yeah, it's in slow motion. Oh, if I could, something's developing here, or this guy's, I can sense the guy's energy is going to move, and that's going to create a lane for me here. And yeah, he just doesn't panic on fourth down. He's just, yeah, it's remarkable. It's honestly, it's amazing. This is the part of you love to see superstars, and this is a superstar. This is superstar, and it's amazing to me as well that like not being a shit. I'm not big into college football, but they said this kid couldn't play, and he transfer portal to LSU, and then he played with those guys, Thomas Jr. and those receivers in that offense at LSU, won the Heisman, and now he's in the NFC title game.
This brings me to a point that annoyed me this week, and it was our good friend Tom Brady at one of these TED Talks. And he was saying the worst thing that college football has allowed is players being allowed to transfer. Like they should just grind out the adversity and sit on the bench. And I'm going to throw a challenge flag to that because, as we've seen with Jaden Daniels, he's flourished. And look at Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow would have sat on the bench at Ohio State, most likely, for the next 2 years. And what would he have learned? What, I got to practice in the face of adversity. No, 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 no. I'm going to go to LSU. I'm going to still work hard and I'm going to win the national championship and develop my championship pedigree. Like, I totally disagree with that. And as you've seen with Jalen Daniels, going to LSU was the best thing that could have happened to him. So, anyway, back to Jalen Daniels.
But Tom Brady, respectfully, is speaking about something that he does not know of. It's a past generation for Brady where he was, he had that, yeah, I'm the sixth round, 199th overall draft pick. He had that chip on his shoulder because he wasn't special at Michigan. But if he was in college now when he was at Michigan, if the transfer portal was open, I don't believe that Tom Brady wouldn't at least entertain the idea of transferring, change the scenery, change of offense, change of skill position players, and possible change of draft pick.
What if Drew Bledsoe didn't get injured as well? What, you're telling me that he would have sat there year after year and just been, yeah, I'm gonna wait my turn. I don't know. Maybe he would have at that point in time, but I think it's a bit of an ideology.
Yeah, it's just a different generation. If Joe Burrow wants to come out and talk, or somebody from the 2000s or the 2010s who was in college at that time wants to come out and talk negatively about the transfer portal, fair enough. But Tom Brady was drafted in when 2000s because he was 2001 Super Bowl, so the 2000 season he was a rookie. Yeah, I mean, you know, he was a 6th round draft pick. Like if he was at LSU, but that seems to be a thing that you don't draft the Alabama quarterback. You just go and draft the LSU quarterback.
Yeah,
They don't need to win national championships. They just produce elite offensive skill position players.
exactly. It's about what you're doing on the field. Like Alabama pre NIL, they were a juggernaut. They had the best players. They weren't asking their quarterbacks to throw for 300 yards, but they still could have because they were throwing slants where these elite receivers were taking it to the house for 70 yards.
Mm.
So Jaden Daniels, like I feel like I don't know if it's my lack of college watching, but in the NFL at least, like this trademark rainbow throw, it is a thing of beauty. Like he, and again, we recognize that the Lions' defense is not elite, but that throw he made, I think, to De'Ami Brown, where it was downfield rainbow throw outside the numbers, it's double coverage, but
Yeah,
the throw was so accurate,
yeah.
it just landed in De'Ami Brown's lap,
Mm.
and this guy it is special. Now, I just want to say one thing. Dan Campbell, after losing the NFC Championship last year, he made a good point. He said he spoke to the players and said, there's no guarantee we get back to this point. And they got close, but he was right. There's
Mm.
no guarantee you get back to this point. And for the Commanders, they've got to strike while the iron is hot. You might not be here next year when everyone is amped up to prepare and stop you. This is your moment, I feel. And so I think we've reached the point where we need to make some picks, Paul.
I would love to continue the fairy tale. And I love Jaden Daniels and I love what he is doing. However, this is the Eagles defense. And they are going to make life really, really difficult for this rookie. I think he's still going to make plays, but the Eagles have too many guys on defense. Someone is going to make a play somewhere, whether it's Jalen Carter's going to wreck the game in the middle, whether it's Zach Bourne at linebacker. He should follow Jaden Daniels. I think that's what they should do. If it's these guys in the secondary, Slay and Mitchell and DeJean, and then Gardner Johnson's like a huge hitter at safety. Jaden Daniels breaks one. Like, you think the Eagles players aren't going to target Jaden Daniels? Is it worth the 15 yards? You know, who's coming in? Marcus Mariota ain't going to take you to the Super Bowl. So if they get the chance, I know Jaden's very good at avoiding contact, and we've seen it, with his elusiveness and the slides that he does. But if they get the chance, like I think, not bounty gate levels, but I think they're gonna hit him, and it's going to be cold. And the Eagles just have a lot of dudes, And I think they've just got too much on defense. So the spread does worry me because the Commanders are in every game seems to be close with the Commanders. But I don't think the Eagles are going to turn the ball over like the Lions did. And I say Eagles win, and Eagles win, Commanders cover. I say they win by 6.
Okay.
I see it kind of like you said it, time of possession game. Eagles will win the time of possession, and I just think they grind it out, and they're going to play the game on their terms because I don't think the Commanders are going to be able to stop the run, and if they can't stop the run, to me, game over. Eagles 27, Commanders 21.